Welcome to this episode of the Mystic Pixi podcast. Today we have our esteemed guest and expert of the Michael teachings. Sorry, I'm really puffing you up here. Uh, Alex Burtson. And yeah, so I found Alex's channel on YouTube. I really couldn't find much information at all about Michael teachings. And so luckily, yeah, Michael, sorry, I called you Michael. Alex had some information, and yeah, I'll leave a link to his channel down below. And we're going to be exploring the Michael teachings today, which is my latest obsession, and we're both very obsessed with it. So yeah, this is Alex.
Yay, thanks, Caroline. Yeah, thanks for having me. It's gonna be fun. Yeah, so yeah, I talk about Michael teachings on my channel. My channel is the Manic Scholar. I have a YouTube, I have an Instagram and a TikTok. My Instagram, TikTok are like usually little summaries of my YouTube videos, so the YouTube is more full-fledged. But I do talk about Michael teachings a lot because I've seen that not a lot of people have information on that so much, like on the internet. It's out of the three systems that I mainly study, it's the one that people know the least about. So I talk about Michael teachings and Vedic astrology as well, and some human design too. But yeah, today the idea was that we would get together and talk about some Michael teaching stuff, how the system works, how the reincarnational cycle works, how the roles work, how everybody has a different soul type. There's a lot of different things we can talk about. But I'm excited to do this with you. It was fun.
Yeah.
I did a session with Caroline talking about her charts through Michael teachings, Vedic astrology, and human design. So that was kind of our introduction. So it's cool to be able to just talk, about whatever you want about those systems now. So yeah, thanks for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. I'm super excited. Yeah, and that was very insightful, and I really did help me. I was seeking a lot of guidance at that time, and still am as the young, third mature soul that I am.
Mature level 3, yeah, me too. We're both mature level 3 souls in Michael teachings.
Yeah, so I guess that's why we're obsessed with the Michael teachings. As mature souls tend to kind of be really into maybe exploring systems of personality and things like that, ways to understand the inner world.
Yeah, the mature soul is the first time out of the whole soul age cycle that you're mainly focused on the inner world as opposed to the outer world. Like the first 3 soul ages, infant, baby, and young, it's all focused on the outer world mainly. But once you get into the mature soul age, it becomes the primary focus becomes the inner world, the emotions, your connections with others. So those can, being in the mature soul age can bring a little bit more interest in the Michael teachings, because most people who actually get channeled through the Michael teachings, like get their charts done, are mature or old level souls.
Right, most of them would have happened upon this information. I wonder, I wonder if the younger souls who get their charts channeled, they knew someone who was a mature soul and wanted them to learn about the Michael teachings as well. I'm not sure if that's the case, but that's interesting, because I want my friend to get their chart done, and they said I introduced this idea of the soul ages to them and the Michael teachings, and they were very interested because they were describing to me that they were having a difficult time connecting with a lot of people. And I said, oh, maybe it's because you're a mature soul. Like, all the problems they were describing were, oh, I always want to share this like deep emotional stuff, and I'm not that driven towards what other people are, and so they were having difficulty connecting, and so I introduced the soul ages to them, and now they want to get their chart read. But yeah, sorry, I just realized that we jumped straight into soul ages. Maybe we could give, or you could give an introduction as to what the Michael teachings are, a brief introduction if it's not, yeah, if you would like to.
Yeah, I can do that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, Michael Teachings is this channeled body of knowledge that talks about our soul types called roles, and we have like an essence configuration. So like our soul is set up a certain way for our whole reincarnational cycle on Earth or whatever planet we're incarnating on. So we have a unique personality setup for the whole cycle that stays the same. But we also have something called overleaves, which are characteristics that we take on for each life. And we progress through the soul ages so that our perspective kind of changes and our lessons that we're learning along the way change. But yeah, so it's a system that was channeled by this it's called an entity called Michael. They're called Michael because the last incarnating soul that was part of this entity was called something like Michael. So they just called themselves Michael. On the higher planes, they don't really have names for everybody. It's just more of an intuitive process. But that's just something for us to reference them. But yeah, an entity is a group of 1,000 souls, and so they're a reunited entity. They basically uh, were incarnating on Earth before we are currently. So they're older souls. They're basically like our older brothers, kind of.
Hmm.
Like they've been on Earth, they did this whole cycle thing, and now they're on the higher planes, focusing on learning about, like, communicating about how our souls are configured, how this whole system works that they talk about. Um,
Does that
so yeah,
align
it's
to one of the soul ages as well? Are they like in their last couple of soul age cycles, or are they?
yeah, I believe they're actually on the Transcendental Soul Age.
Oh, cool. Okay.
So that's what
Yeah.
the Transcendental Soul Age is after the Old Soul Age, and it happens when once all your members of your entity or your soul family are done incarnating on Earth, they'll go to the higher planes. They'll go from the astral, which is where everybody's waiting until everybody's back. They'll go from the astral to the causal, and then there'll be a more like more of a cohesive unit where everybody is sharing energy together. They have a very intuitive process where it just goes back and forth, and they just share everything together. So it's like they're like one grand soul at that stage, all communicating and working together
An
in
entity.
this intuitive process. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, that's really cool. Uh, I love that. And sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt your introduction. I just got really excited. Um, so
You didn't interrupt
um,
anything. I don't even remember what I was gonna say.
okay,
That's okay.
okay, great.
You're good.
I feel like that was a good introduction though, um, because I mean because yeah, like the system, yeah, it's another way to understand yourself and understand like perhaps what your soul came here to do. So it automatically assumes the idea of souls and yeah, soul purpose and reincarnation and that sort of thing. Um, which I suppose that leads me on to my next question, and um, the question being, what led you to the Michael teachings, and why do you find that it's a, I guess, credible source of information, or a good source of information that you
Yeah.
can understand yourself through?
Yeah, I found out about it because I'm just like super interested in personality and understanding people in general. I wanted to understand myself really like deeply, but I'm also just very curious about how everybody else is. Uh, everybody has a very unique personality and setup and purpose, so everybody's on their own path. Um, So I studied like a bunch of different systems. You know, I was like interested in like Myers-Briggs at one point. That was one of the earlier ones I looked at when I was younger. Enneagram I picked up at one point, and I thought that was super interesting. So
Yeah,
I
I
was
love
studying
those.
those, and then at some point I ran into this website where this guy basically was bringing together these different systems. I forget the name of it. But yeah, he had an example of, I think it was Albert Einstein's chart, like what his role was. I don't remember if he's a scholar or an artisan. He probably has both mixed, like a mix of scholar and artisan. But yeah, I saw that on his chart on his website, and then I was like, this is really interesting. Where did he get this information? And then I just started researching Michael teachings, and then I found, you know, a bunch of books on it. I found out about Shepherd Hoodwin, who is one of the authors of, he wrote this book Journey of Your Soul, which talks about Michael teachings, and he's a Michael channel. So he channels Michael charts that shows all the characteristics that are unique to you. You know, it's your own chart that shows your essence and your overleaves. So the essence is what stays the same for your whole reincarnation cycle, and the overleaves is what characteristics you take on for this life. So what's really interesting about it is there's several different aspects to a chart. I can show you guys. Should I show an example chart? So
Yes.
just
Oh
to
my God.
refer. Um, okay, let me see. I gotta share my screen real quick. So this is Kid Cudi's chart. Can you see it?
Yeah, yeah.
So this is Kid Cudi, singer rapper. Um, I make these a certain version of the charts that's a little bit different than other way other people have done it, where I have it color coded. Um, Basically, there's all these different characteristics that are aligned with different axes. So you can see on here, this on the top, there's the roles for each axes. There's inspiration, expression, action, and assimilation types. And then you have all these different characteristics that you can take on for a life. And so everybody's a special mix of all of these, like different ones. So if you look at Kid Cudi's, you can see there's the main thing to look at is the role. That's like your soul type, and his is King. And then you have something called the Essence Twin that has its own role that also influences you, gives you a little bit more flavor of a different role. You got some further secondaries. His is Scholar. Um, there's something called Male and Female Energy,
Whoa.
Balance,
Cool.
um,
Do you have
Global
a
Job and Community
time?
Responsibility. That's also a factor in the charts. So that stuff is all that stuff that stays the same for your whole reincarnation cycle, and then the overleaves are here on the right, which includes the soul age. This is actually the baby soul age. It's also called structure.
Oh my
Um,
God, really?
yeah,
Whoa. Okay,
yeah.
maybe we
So
can, yeah.
there's a lot of stuff in a chart. Like it's so much like more in depth than like the Enneagram, because the Enneagram will tell you one thing. Like it'll just tell you this is your type, which is more like how your ego uh approaches reality. You know, it deals with uh kind of how your energy is configured, what energy centers you're more favoring, and which ones are you're weaker in. That's kind of what the Enneagram shows. Uh, but this has so much more. It has the role. It has like some secondaries. Got the male female energy frequency, and then
Yeah.
there's all these stuff that's specific to this life. Like if you look at your Enneagram, you're not going to know what your soul type is. Like you're not going to know information about your soul that stays the same for your whole reincarnational cycle. There's no other system that I know of that talks about your essence in that sense, you know, that stays the same for all your lives. So that's what's really cool about the Michael teachings is it gives you insight into what kind of like by studying it you can get a better understanding of why you're here, you know, what kinds of things you really wanted to focus on and learn. Um, So, you know, it's super interesting. You know, you have also stuff
Mm.
like body types and obstacles that you take on,
Yes.
centering,
Which would
a
mean
goal
like,
for the life, attitude and mode. Those are like further modifications on your personality. So it's a really cool system. It tells you a lot of information that other systems just can't even touch. So that's why I like the Michael teaching so much.
Yes, which is, yeah, it's exactly like there's so much in the Michael teachings. You can look at your past reincarnational cycles as well, and it can kind of tell you how many past lives you may have lived, not just on this planet, but maybe on another planet. And in your past reincarnational cycles, maybe you would have been a different role as well. So it can even give you a greater understanding of others and why they might be performing certain ways that you like. As an example, as an artisan, I sometimes wish that there was certain structures to the world, or the way that things are meant to be created and played out. Yeah, and so I have a friend, I feel like she's a server, and when she does certain things, I watch and I say to myself, it would structurally it could be done more like this, and then that would feel better to me as an artisan. But as a server, she's got a different approach and way to support and lift others up, I suppose. And so yeah,
Yeah.
maybe you were a server in a past life, and so uh yeah, that's also an interesting part of the Michael teachings. It kind of shows how we all are essentially one and trying to experience things from different viewpoints. Um, so I did just want to add that because I love the Michael teachings for those similar yeah, for similar things as well. If if you are someone who's more pragmatic and you're coming to the Michael teachings, maybe another approach for you is to see if any of it resonates and see if you can observe anything in your actual life that could be explained by this. And if you can, then maybe that's another way for you to not just understand yourself better, but also understand others better, and not necessarily buy into this. It's always good to test information against what you know and against your own intuition before just completely believing it. So I just want to say that, you know, test it for yourself, but maybe stay open-minded. If you want, do whatever you want, but just some suggestions. And yeah, why, I guess, I don't know. I believe in
Yes.
this or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. In my experience, like it probably depends on the channel that you get. The channel that I use for the charts that I've got was Shepherd Hoodwin. He's probably my favorite channel. I haven't worked with a lot of other ones, but everything I've gotten from him was like super super accurate. I ended up getting charts for like my whole family.
Wow.
I have, my brother, my sister, my mom, my dad, my stepdad, my aunt, my uncle, my cousins. Like I have all their
Wow.
charts, and all the charts I look into, I'm like, oh, this explains so much. Like one thing that really stood out to me
Cool.
was like I'm a scholar in the system, and my brother's also a scholar,
Oh,
and my sister is a server, and I found out also that my aunt is also a server, and they both have this very similar quality about them, where they're just like so like nurturing and caring and warm that
yeah.
everybody just loves them because just have this charm about them, and they're just so sweet.
Mm,
uh so it's just interesting to see that those qualities really, like, you can see through the different people, like, okay, that really does make sense for them. um
mm.
but yeah, something interesting you're saying was that we actually do have past cycles. So, like, when you look at your chart and you look at your essence, let's say, like in Kid Cudi's case, he's a king. He's a king for all his lives on Earth, but that doesn't mean that he's been a king for his whole existence as a individual sentient soul. He actually had, if you look down here, previous
Oh,
cycles.
wow.
He had 10 previous cycles before he was actually a king, and he chose to be a king on Earth. So all the stuff that you see here was config this the configuration he chose before he started incarnating on Earth. But he's done this 10 times in the past. So something you can look at to figure out like how many lives you probably had. You can take the previous cycles, multiply it by 100 to 200, because on average to complete a cycle, it's about 100 to 200 lives. So that would mean that for him, for previous cycles, he's had 1,000 to 2,000 lives, and now he's in the structure or baby soul age, right here, level 7. So it's about 2 to 3 lives per level here. So you could say maybe he had 20 lives so far as a in this cycle on Earth. So like right now he's finishing up the baby soul age, which is focused on structure, being part of society, getting along with everybody else, being incorporated into larger community instead of being part of like small tribes and stuff, which would have been the survival or infant soul age. But then he's getting ready to step into the young soul age, which is a focus on achievement in the outer world, and success. It's trying to be as successful as you can in the outer world is kind of the theme of the next soul age for him. And then after that, you go into the mature soul age. Let me just make this bigger. Mature soul age, which is actually where me and Caroline are at right now. We're both mature level 3. And this is where you go from basically from the first 3 soul ages, you're focused on the inner world. The outer world, survival, structure, and achievement. And then you go into the inner world in the mature soul age. So that's actually one of the most difficult transitions to have, is to go from young to mature, or from achievement to relationship. Because you have to start to confront what you're feeling inside, deal with difficult emotions. There's things that happen during the mature soul age, like mental illnesses can happen, drug use and suicide is very common in mature soul age.
Wow, really?
A lot of difficult stuff, because you have to confront the inner world for the first time as your main, the main lessons you're learning during that time. But it goes very deep, it's like very heavy and emotional time.
I have a question. Is
Yeah.
the emotions that you're processing through as a mature soul, are those all contained within your things that you carried through in this reincarnational cycle? Do you know if that's the case at all, thing from your past lives in this cycle as well, or if it's more an exploration of your emotions within the mature soul lifetime cycle? So however many lives you would have as a mature soul, you're processing those emotions, or you're also processing ones from past lives, if you know what I mean.
Well, it's the mature soul age is dealing, it's built upon the first 3 soul ages. So you've gone through those stages, learned those lessons. When you're stepping into the mature soul age, you're confronting the inner world for the first time.
Okay.
So it could be, I would say it's probably based on things you've experienced so far in the cycle. I'm not sure how much effect past lives have, like, or like past cycles have on this cycle. I assume that those kind of get cleaned up in the whole process of the cycle, and you're just learning about what you've gone through in this cycle and the different lives you had. What I've heard is that you have basically in each life you have kind of like a backlog of experiences, and maybe talents that you've had, or certain themes that played out through several lives. So when you come to have a new life and incarnate, you're dealing with certain karma that you built up from past lives. So there'll be certain themes that are playing out in your life, based on outstanding karma from several lives, and several lives can be connected together through themes, for things that you've been doing that are very similar. Yeah, so So you can be dealing with karma that you've built up from several lives in just this one life. It's not necessarily the last life, it could be even older lives. But my personal experience with that is, like I've had certain emotions and feelings, psychic energies that were probably from certain past lives I've had that were all interacting together, and that I've had to kind of sort through in my own life. I've had to have like, you know, healed myself through meditation and also doing stuff like soul retrievals.
Oh,
But I had a lot of like heavy emotional energy from past lives that got explained to me when I had my soul retrieval. Like there were certain lives that I had and certain struggles. So that gave me some context for like kind of what I came from in the past. Um, but yeah, each life is going to be different based on what outstanding karma you have, and each life is going to be dedicated to resolving and working through the certain karmas that you have that are outstanding.
okay. Wow.
Yeah, I hope
That's
that answered your question.
Yeah, that's so insightful. I feel like that it kind of explains that you would carry things, certain patterns from past lives, and you would be resolving certain lessons you didn't learn, and so you might go through similar emotional cycles. And then there's also another part of that, which is the soul retrieval aspect or emotional things that you may have carried through as well. So
Yeah.
uh, yeah. That's interesting. Okay. What is soul retrieval, by the way? I've heard it used a lot. I actually don't know how to define it.
Yeah, from my understanding, it is um, if you have some kind of difficulties relating to past lives that you've had that are kind of maybe splitting off aspects of your soul, your energy. Um, it's a way to heal that and to kind of restore yourself to be full and ready to confront this life. Um, so like in my case, I had a lot of stuff from past lives that I was trying to resolve and heal on my own. And I was going into past life, like in my dreams, I would go into past lives to try to heal my past. But excuse me, I
Wow.
was I was trying to resolve this stuff on my own, but I wasn't. It made it harder uh to be grounded and present here and work on what this life is about. What I want to accomplish in this life. I had spent too much energy going back into the past that wouldn't allow me to make progress in this life and focus on what's new and what I'm here to accomplish. So it's basically healing the past so that I can better approach the present. You know,
Wow. Okay, that's really cool. That also relates to in human design. I don't know if you have gate 41 or gate
I do.
11. You do. I feel like
Yeah, I'm 41.
it's either 41 or it's 11, but one of those is the gate of fantasy, and it sounds like you're
Mhm.
describing that. Wow, that's so,
That's interesting. I do have 41. I have the
yeah.
channel 4130 that goes from the 41 is in the root, and it connects to the channel that connects to the emotional solar plexus. So I actually do have 41. That's funny that you said that that I do have
Yeah,
that.
yeah, what the heck?
Yeah,
Wow,
that's really interesting.
very interesting. Because if it does relate to fantasy, then that sounds very much like what you're describing. And when I was reading about it, I don't have this gate. I just
Mhm.
know it relates to a certain tarot card. I was reading about it and I couldn't quite get the understanding, but now that you're giving this personal example, um, it feels like that um yeah, that really fills it in. That's so cool.
Well,
Well,
that's interesting.
yeah, maybe maybe there's something there for you. Yeah.
Mhm. What else would you like to talk about the Michael teachings?
Ooh, well, oh my God. Okay. Well, uh, I feel like one thing that's kind of interesting is could be going into the obstacle and the goal, because I feel like those two things give a lot of meaning in terms of direction and purpose. Another interesting thing, which could be good to go. So maybe we can start there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so both the goal and the obstacles are part of your overleaves. So they're characteristics that you take on for this life only. The goal is kind of the overarching goal for this life. It's kind of the lessons you're learning for this life. And we're looking at Kid Cudi's chart right here. You can see his goal is discrimination. Which is the same one that you have, Caroline.
Yeah.
Except you have discrimination sliding to acceptance, so it's a little bit different. But the goal of discrimination means that in this life you're learning the lesson of how to say no to things, to make better choices, so that you're not just getting bringing things into your life that are not serving you. You're able to make better choices and know, like, okay, so this is the kind of people I want in my life. I don't want these people in my life. I'm gonna have these kinds of experiences. I don't want to have those experiences. So there's gonna be a theme throughout life. That you're always going to be like, I don't know about that. I don't know if I like that, or I don't know if I like that person. Um, Stuff like that will be kind of the theme of what this life, one of the main themes of this life will be.
What?
If you look at some other charts, like I have Alister Crowley's here.
Ooh.
His goal is dominance. So that's basically about being kind of like at the top of your field, being an authority, at least in the domain in which you are representing, maybe what you're studying or whatever you're specializing in. You're kind of the leader of what you're doing. You're the one that's out there doing the new thing, showing everybody how to go about something. And it's about kind of being an authority or an example for
And you
others.
you have the goal of dominance as well.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. So let me see if I can get. I have this bar is on the top. I can't see. Oh yeah, here's my chart. So I can talk about my chart a little bit. So you have a little example of how this relates to me. So yeah, I actually have the goal of dominance too. Alister Crowley, he's a priest, but I'm a scholar. So I'm a scholar in dominance. What that means is I'm probably going to be I'm learning about lessons of leadership in this life, but I'm going to be approaching things as the way a scholar would. So it would be different. Like, let's say if I was a warrior in dominance, how the energy would come across would be a little bit different, because warrior is an action axis role and dominance is an action axis goal. So it'll be a little bit more intense. Like Hitler was a warrior in dominance. Um, but I'm a scholar in dominance. A good example of that is, I don't know if you know Jordan Peterson.
Yeah.
Um, but I did his chart too. I have a video on my YouTube.
That was so
Uh,
interesting. His
yeah,
soul
he's a
age.
scholar in dominance also.
Yeah.
So
Right.
you can see how that works for him. But he does have a lot of action axis essence characteristics. Like he's got I think he's got a king essence twin and some warrior secondary. And then his global job and community responsibility are like full on warrior, like at warrior everything. So he has a lot of action axis stuff, but his main role is scholar. So you can see how he's going about it is like what scholars do is they provide knowledge. They like to study things in depth. They're very curious. They want to know things so that they can uh, provide that information and knowledge to others. They're the neutral type that provides um, information as a resource for everybody else to use. So that's what you can see from there, from looking at my chart here. In terms of the obstacles are another thing that you take on for each life. It's like it does relate to things that you've done in past lives a little bit. It just but it helps. It's something. It's like a challenge that you take on to overcome. And my main obstacle is arrogance. And what arrogance means is not necessarily the stereotypical arrogance that you'd understand, like when you say somebody's arrogant. What it really means is that you have a fear of being judged. So you'll basically, that can manifest as a type of shyness. which is kind of how it worked in my case. Um,
Mm,
it's like being afraid of like how people are going to perceive you and judge you for who you are, what you're doing. That creates this kind of like fear in you that kind of shuts things down, and you want to hide away or not. You don't want to be judged, so you just kind of try to hide from everybody. That's one possible way you go about things as with the obstacle of arrogance. But you could also like be kind of perfectionistic, like try to be so perfect that nobody can judge you for what you're doing. That's kind of another way it can manifest. Or it can be that you just puff yourself up to feel like you're bigger and more important than other people. So you have this air about you that's more of the stereotypical arrogance. Um, but it actually stems from a fear of being judged. So you have to puff yourself up to kind of compensate for that. Um, so in my case, I have dominance as the goal, but I have obstacle of arrogance, which kind of goes against the goal of dominance, because the goal of dominance wants to be connected. It's connected to a lot of other people. It's going to influence a lot of people with the goal of dominance. So you have to be interacting with people. So there has to be, if I didn't overcome my arrogance obstacle at all, then I could possibly have just hide away and not accomplish my goal of dominance properly. So
mm.
there's an aspect that I have to overcome the arrogance to properly fulfill my goal in this life.
So that would be quite a difficult combination of obstacle and goal. I also saw someone who had the goal of flow, and
Yeah.
their obstacle was stubbornness. So very, very contradictory, because the goal of flow, from my understanding, is that you basically want to like go with the flow. Like everything in your life will just be fulfilled. Like you chose to have a life that was going to be very easy for you so that you could be more contemplative or something like that.
Hmm.
Uh, and then the obstacle of stubbornness is, I've got this one as a secondary, so
Yeah.
I can see it quite clearly. I feel like you can see your second obstacle. In my case, I feel like I can see it more clearly and know
Hmm.
when to just let go of that one a bit more. But anyway, the obstacle of arrogance, I found that it can kind of, sorry, obstacle of stubbornness can be like just, yeah, really digging your heels in and saying no to everything and not wanting to move, not wanting to be touched, not wanting to be influenced. If I want to stay in my room, there's no way in hell I'm leaving. You can't convince me. Um,
Yeah.
and so if you have stubbornness as an obstacle, then that's stopping you from going with the flow. That would be very contradictory. And that's a
Yeah,
very,
that does make sense.
yeah. So that's really interesting that um yeah, those go along like that. And I also have arrogance as my main obstacle, and yeah, being perfect, what you said before, is definitely, and the shyness thing is also
Hmm.
um very present, and it's quite, it feels like it does have a hold on you. uh and I don't know if you get this as well, but I kind of get this like sense that I simultaneously feel like people are watching me and judging me, and
Hmm.
yeah, all the time. And also that and so yeah, I guess it makes me turn inwards. And but at the same time, I read in the book that you recommended that you want people to be watching you, but at the same time you don't. It's a kind of weird energy, because yeah, if you're seen, then you can potentially be judged or condemned or humiliated. It's very associated with embarrassment and humiliation. I
Yeah.
I connect to, yeah.
What I've heard is that like if you choose the obstacle of arrogance for life, that you probably had lives in the past where um you were judged in some severe way, and you dealt some severe consequences. Either you were publicly humiliated, like in a horrible way, or maybe you were even killed for what you were doing. Which
Jesus.
can create that feeling of a fear of being judged. So you don't uh end up in that kind of situation again, I guess.
Yeah, oh, okay. Right, it's a protective kind of mechanism almost. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I actually got on the train and I realized that I was kind of scared of the school kids who got on the train. I was actually very terrified that they were gonna like start throwing something at me. Um and it was just funny to like reflect on what I was thinking, how I was feeling, and then contemplate the actual worst case scenario, which is they do humiliate me in some capacity, or they make fun of like my weight or my looks or stuff like that. And
Mm.
then for me, then I like facing that in my mind, the fear kind of just dissipates because I'm like, oh, it's then not actually that bad. It might actually be healthy for my ego. Like, and it would
Yeah,
be kind of funny maybe for an onlooker. I don't, or depends what they did, and if they were being jokey. But yeah, yeah. So
yeah. To like overcome the arrogance obstacle, you basically have to get to a point where you're okay with being judged. Like it's not a bad thing. Like you can be judged all you want, and it's not gonna hurt you. All it's gonna do is possibly give you some insight into the way you can do things better. Um,
Mhm.
but like the there's some kind of dualistic basis to this obstacle, and I think that a lot of like all the obstacles deal with that, the more the duality aspect, the dualistic aspect of life, where there's other people that you're afraid of, like in the case of arrogance, that you're afraid of other people, but really the on a spiritual absolute level, everybody that exists is you. We're all the same essence on that absolute level, so there's nothing, the separation and individual aspect is just is happening inside the context of a unity, where we're all one. um so from understanding that and perceiving from that place, there wouldn't be any stories playing out in your head of, oh, this person's going to judge me, because you just realize that all is the self anyway, you know
Mhm.
um but to overcome arrogance, you have to kind of put yourself in a position where you are vulnerable to being judged, and that you're around others. You have to interact with other people. If you have the obstacle of arrogance and you just stay, isolated, and you don't interface with the wider world, then there's no way that you can actually work on the obstacle of arrogance, because the fears that arise during with the arrogance obstacle arise when you're confronted with the situation where you can be judged, where you're in front of people. Um,
Mhm.
so it just takes practice. You have to acknowledge, okay, I have this fear that comes up and it kind of shuts down my system. I get anxiety or whatever. But I'll just put myself in these situations because I know it's good for me. It allows me to, I can seek out my goals and try to fulfill them, and it doesn't really matter so much that people can judge me.
Mhm.
So yeah, that book that I recommended to you is called Transforming Your Dragons, and it's written by one of the uh I forget his name, but he's one of the main. I
Oh
think it's Jose
yes,
Stevens. Jose
Steven.
Stevens.
What is it? I'm
Jose Stevens.
yeah. Oh, the book. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, he's written some other books on Michael
Yeah.
teachings as well.
Yeah, Jose Stevens. Yeah.
Yeah, so he's got a really good book on all the different obstacles. Um, so if you got your chart channeled, you can look at and read that and learn about how to overcome your particular obstacle. Excuse me. So so
Do you
yeah, what were you gonna say?
Oh, do you know if they have any on the goals at all? A book on the goals, or if that's more contained in the Michael book that Shepherd Hoodwin wrote. Or
Shepard's book covers a lot of different kind of miscellaneous topics
Mhm.
that the other books don't cover. So it gives them he has his own kind of stuff going on in his book, which is Journey of Your Soul, which is a really great book. But there's some other books that are more like foundational texts for Michael teachings. There's the Michael Handbook, which I believe is also Jose Stevens.
Yeah.
So you have to look up that one. I'm gonna look it up real quick and see. Can you see my screen still, or?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, this one right here. It's also Jose Stevens and Warwick Smith Simon. That's a really good book. The Michael Handbook. It covers all the different overleaves in your chart. Talks about the goals. Talks about attitudes, modes, all that stuff.
Okay.
And that one's on Kindle also, so that's a really useful book to have.
Oh, amazing. Yeah, I do really want to read both of those next. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but what's really cool about the Michael teachings is when you're looking at your chart, you can kind of see certain things that are going to be kind of a unique configuration. Like in my case, like we're looking at my chart right now. Like you were saying, I have the goal of dominance, the obstacle of arrogance. The arrogance kind of gets in the way of the goal of dominance. But I also have a little bit different of way that dominance would manifest itself in my case, because I have stoic attitude, which is really strange combination with dominance, because dominance is about the the external world, action axis kind of stuff, but stoic is basically not focused so much on what's happening on the outer world. It's more focused on the inner world and the emotions, what's happening inside. Whatever is happening on the outside does not matter so much to a stoic person. So they're basically going to be like, whatever's happening is fine. I'm good however anything's going, So it's a kind of a strange flavor of dominance to have with the stoic. And then plus I have caution mode. So I'm not going to be like aggressively coming out with my dominance. I'm going to be very cautious in how I go about displaying dominance. So it's going to be a little bit different than other people who have the goal of dominance. So like if you look at Alister Crowley, his goal is dominance as well, but he has pragmatist. That's a little bit different. It's more focused on what's practical. And then he's got power mode. So that with the goal of dominance really amplifies the kind of the intensity of his personality, because he's going to express himself strongly with authority, and he's in dominance. So it comes out a little bit different. He's also in the young soul age, at the end of the young soul age, which is also called striving. So yeah, it's a little bit different. Everybody's going to have their certain goal, but you look at the other overleaves and it's going to tell a different story for each person.
Mm-hmm. It's very, yeah, it's so fascinating. And yeah, there's like millions of different configurations. I mean, I guess every single soul on this planet, of course, theirs would be unique, because as we were talking about earlier in the cadres, you're a part of a cadre, so, and an entity, so.
Yeah, the entities are a group of 1,000 souls. So if you look at your chart, they have actually listed out numbers for the cadres, and there's numbers for the entities. So an entity is a group of 1,000 souls, and a cadre is a group of 7 entities. So the cadre is bigger. It's about 7 times the size of an entity. And then you have 7 entities per cadre, and each of the entities kind of aligns with a different of the different role. So in my case, I'm in cadre 4, but entity 7. You can see how I have this in red here. That means it aligns with king. So everybody in my entity is going to have some kind of king flavor to them. And it's also there's some like information on each of the cadres and entities a little bit, that if you get a chart from Shepherd, you can actually read about that kind of stuff. But yeah, so we were part of soul families. What I found out after getting charts channeled for my family and friends is basically everybody in my family is in the same cadre as me. We're all cadre 4.
Really?
But we're all in different entities inside that. So I'm in 4-7. My dad was in 4-6. My aunt is 4-5. My mom is 4-4. My stepdad is 4-3. My brother's 4-2. and my sister's 4-1. So it's like, it's pretty crazy. But they say that you actually interact with a lot of people that are in your cadre, but of course you're going to interact with people of all different cadres and entities.
Mhm.
But I also found out that when I was getting charts channeled of different celebrities that I like, a lot of them were in my cadre as well. So I was
Oh,
just like really attracted to people that were in my cadre. So there's some kind of like soul connection there, you know?
yeah,
It was like different people in bands that I like, or like different authors or spiritual people, and I was seeing a lot of uh people in my cadre. So there's something about that too that you can do more research on. If you have a backlog of different charts, you can see like, oh, okay, so this person's in this cadre and this entity, um, and they're kind of associated on a soul level with these people. So that's something I was looking into after looking, getting a lot of charts channeled. So it's the interesting aspect of your chart as well that you can look into.
that's super cool. So cool. I wonder as well, have you been seeing uh that the overleaves connect to the Vedic astrology in terms of each celebrity? Have any patterns arisen yet from seeing if an overleaf, if you could potentially predict someone's astrological sign based on their overleafs or anything like that?
Yeah, the thing that I've seen the most, that seems to be a theme, is that the body types seem to correspond with um the influences on the first house or the ascendant. So if you have a planet aspecting your first house, or you have a planet in your first house, that might be an indication of what kind of body type you have. So like in my case,
Mm.
my primary body type is Saturnian, and I'm a Capricorn ascendant, which is ruled by Saturn, and Saturn is in the first house, so it's in Capricorn in the ascendant. So I've got a big Saturn theme in my chart. It's like the most primary thing because it's my chart ruler. It rules my ascendant, and it's in the first house. So that's like a very prominent thing. And then if we look at yours here, you have jovial, Venusian, and Saturnian. Jovial is like Jupiter. In your chart, you have Jupiter aspecting the first house. You have Venus in the first house, and you have Saturn. I believe you had it in you have it in the seventh house, which
Mhm.
is actually aspecting the first house as well. So you have those three planets aspecting the first house, and they make up your body types. So it's interesting to see how that works. Um, there
It
seems to be some
is,
crossover there.
yeah, it's so interesting, but like even if you looked at the normal astrology, whatever the fuck, sorry, I keep Western astrology, sorry,
Yeah.
Western astrology, comparatively, if you compared it to your Michael chart, these wouldn't align as much, you know? And then if you compare the Vedic astrology, like somehow it's aligning. I just love that they're validating each other. It feels like it's creating a broader picture and like this kind of mandala effect or like
Hmm.
a Venn diagram effect or I don't know. It's just beautiful how it kind of all connects. And yeah, I wonder, yeah, how the rest of the overleaves can connect to the Vedic astrology, like I guess afterwards.
Yeah. Overall, it shows a different kind of thing than what your Vedic astrology is going to show. Because
Mhm.
all the different houses in your Vedic astrology chart, none of those are talked about in your Michael chart. You can't look at your Vedic astrology chart and figure out your centering, for example. There's not going to be something that's going to tell you, oh, you process things through uh, your emotions first. There's nothing going to be like that. There's not going to be anything that says your goal is discrimination. So there's information on your Michael chart that you just can't get um from your Vedic astrology. But there's some things you can see that are themes that play out in both charts. Like for you, for example, you have artisan role, um, and you have a lot of influence from Venus, uh, because you have a yoga for Venus, the Malavya yoga, because you have Venus in the first house in Libra, so it's in its own sign, and it's in a Kendra, one of the powerful houses. And the first house
Oh,
is a Kendra.
oh,
So that can show, talent for all the Venus significations, the arts, beauty, creativity, stuff like that, sensuality, stuff like that, charm, sociability, that kind of stuff.
oh,
So you can kind of see that from the role a little bit. Um, so you can look at your essence, and then there might be some significations of, maybe like creativity, or if there's some significations of some kind of spiritual talent or something. You can see that as well.
mhm.
Um, so like for you, you have your cadence position as priest. That's more of a spiritual influence, and you have your Jupiter with K2, which is actually a certain yoga. That indicates that you had. Um, they actually say, like, if you have Jupiter with K2, that you have some kind of talent in Vedic astrology from past lives. That's
Oh,
just something general they like to say.
okay.
But it could be anything spiritual in general,
Oh,
like some kind of spiritual talent.
oh,
Um, so it helps to put them all together, and you can see there's certain themes that play out in those three systems, in your Michael teachings, your Vedic astrology, and your human design. You'll see certain themes playing out across these different systems, but there's information in each that you can't get from the other ones. So
mhm.
that's why I like to use all the three of them in tandem together, to get a more overall explanation of what's going on for you.
Yeah, yeah, which is really awesome. It's almost like what the spiral dynamics guy uh he researched so many different systems and then created one. It feels as though they're a similar kind of method, which is really cool because I don't know, spiral dynamics guys or person, whoever invented it, is cool. So uh yeah, that's awesome. I have no idea how long we have been recording this. Uh
It's getting close to an hour. I think we
oh,
started like at 9,
oh, okay.
my time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, okay, perfect.
it's
I'm
been
sorry.
about an hour.
All right. Well, if that's the case, then uh I don't know, is there any final things that we could talk about for the Michael chart? I feel like we did like a pretty like
Yeah, we covered some of the main stuff. I mean, there's other stuff. The main things to look at in your chart, I would
Mhm,
say the most important things are your role.
mhm,
That's going to be the most primary thing in your essence. You're going to have some secondaries of other roles for inside your essence. But the most important things are like the soul age. That's a really big thing to understand. We talked about that. Talked about goals a little bit. There's some different goals I can talk about real quick. Like, um, all the different goals are reevaluation, growth. Growth is the most popular one. Discrimination, acceptance, submission, dominance, and flow. So we talked about a few of those: flow, dominance, discrimination. Um, but yeah, those are some of the main things. I would say the role, soul age, and goal are the most primary things, and then you have a bunch of things in your overleads, which we did talk about with the obstacle, the body type, the centering a little bit. So we did a pretty good overall introduction to it. Um, so I feel pretty good about it.
yeah. Okay. Okay, cool. Well, okay, that's great. Then yeah, I mean, if you want to find out more stuff, uh, Alex talks a lot about this stuff, on his channel anyway, and so I'll leave that all linked below, and it's a good resource. And I kind of also want to talk a little bit about the obstacles. I made a video on arrogance, I believe, which was my production quality is increasing. It's so so yeah, thank you for tuning in and finding out a little bit about this system. And yeah, have a beautiful day. Thank you for being here, and yeah,
Yeah,
bye.
thanks for having me. Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yes,
Yeah,
thank you
if you ever
for
want to talk
letting me know.
about any of these systems again, like if you want to talk more about Michael teachings, a certain aspect, or comparing to different systems, that's also really cool. Or Vedic astrology, we can talk in the future. I'd be totally down to do this again. But yeah, my channel is the Manic Scholar. The Manic Scholar on everything. So TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. That's my handle that I go by, so you can check that out. But yeah, thanks so much, Caroline. This was fun. So
Yeah,
I would love to do this again. So
yeah, me too. We'll do it again.
okay, cool.
Okay. Well, cool. Okay, I guess I'll end the recording.